Welcome into the best damn college football show out there. We got Rob Veno. I am Drew Martin. Guys, we're rolling through a Friday night game and two Saturday games. So a lot to break down here on today's card. Ralph Michaels will be joining us shortly. But Robbie, welcome in. How you feeling?
I am good today, Drew. How about yourself?
Good. Always good to be talking college football with you and Ralph here. And the three games we got on docket, guys, we're going to hit. But we also start off the show with what we learned last week or so far this season in 2020, Robbie. A lot of changes. And actually, if you're playing it right, it's actually good to be a sports bettor this year. Just because it's so difficult, in my opinion, for the odds makers to be putting out these numbers with so much volatility in the market, so much changing out there. So is there anything you wanted to throw out to the watchers in terms of what you've learned so far that can maybe help them this week and in the future betting college football?
Well, I think there's a couple things just from fundamental standpoints, Drew, not necessarily from point spread standpoints. But if you go to the SEC and you look at the job that defensive coordinator Barry Odom is doing at Arkansas, it's amazing to see what Arkansas has done defensively against their list of opponents so far. That defense, through his structure, through his game planning, has really performed well above average. Remember, this is a team that went through a lot of personnel upheaval when they first made the coaching switch to Chad Morris. Remember, he was coming in after the Wisconsin coach Brett Bielema had taken over and had to get all new personnel to fit the system. Arkansas really didn't have it as bad this time because some spread personnel from an offensive standpoint was in place. But the defense had been an absolute mess, and here comes Barry Odom to correct things in a hurry. So for me, Arkansas, I don't know that it's a fluke. You see one result, you think, oh, well, that's okay. Especially the first half against Georgia. They looked really, really good. Second half, Georgia started to pull away. But ever since then, what they've done to the two Mississippi offensive gurus, Mike Leach and Lane Kiffin last week, pretty good stuff as far as points allowed is concerned. I think the ACC, Drew, has really turned into a lot like Mountain West shootouts, Pac-12 shootouts. There's just nobody that plays a lot of defense aside from Clemson inside that particular conference. I would say Notre Dame as well. Clemson and Notre Dame have both played pretty good defenses this season, but the rest of the league, you can certainly look toward totals over in that particular conference. I think I had Virginia and Wake Forest over the total last week is a big play, despite the fact that Virginia had to go with their backup quarterback, Lindell Scott, or Virginia, excuse me. And the North Carolina State Duke game probably should have gotten over the total, but didn't in the end. David Cutcliffe's team, 0 points in the second half. But I think the perception of the ACC right now, you're looking over more than you are under, especially now you can add Florida State to that list with Jordan Travis. And I guess let me just stay on Florida State here real quick, Drew, not to draw this out too long, but what they discovered defensively in their game last week, the amount of pressure they were able to get into the backfield and disrupt the quarterback and make tackles behind the line of scrimmage, that's something to watch going forward with FSU, because remember, we've talked a lot about how the defense didn't really have any leaders according to the coaching staff, and they were changing parts every single week. And maybe right now enough weeks have gone by to where they've stumbled onto something, but they played with a lot of heart, a lot of emotion, and the defense looked much better for FSU this week. I mean, you didn't have to do a heck of a lot to look better. They looked much better. So we'll track Florida State from the defensive side from here on out.
Yeah, total agreement with you on Florida State, Robbie. I mean, Florida State, they covered just barely against Notre Dame. I took the loss on it the week before. And then what they were able to do against North Carolina, you're right. It was a great buy low opportunity on Florida State. Something that I was worried about, maybe the team would quit on the new coach and they could just be fade city where you could rack up some units just fading them each and every week. But they did turn it around. They regrouped. So you got to give a shout out there to Florida State. We also got Ralph Michaels joining us from Las Vegas, Nevada. Follow him on Twitter at CalSportsLV. Ralph, welcome in, buddy. How you feeling?
Hey guys, good. WagerTalk today just ran an extra minute, so my apologies for getting over from one show to the other. One thing I wanted to comment on just on your Florida State, I think it's completely different, guys, when you have a brand new head coach that the players like. You're not going to have that fade where they're a team to fade against one after another. I think those fades happen when a coach has been there multi-years and you know the coach is on his way out. Norvell gets a lot of credit, had some COVID issues, hasn't been with the team as much. But I think, seeing what Norvell did, at Memphis, they know even as an assistant out in Arizona, for Arizona State, what he can do. So to me, it's a different mindset with a new head coach that brings excitement. One thing I just want to mention, just to jump in, year-to-date numbers, I just want to keep people apprised because we talk about them here. Home favorites from 2015 to 2019 went 50%. Home favorites this year, only 42.3%. So down 7%. Home dogs from 2015 to 2019 went 50.5%, right at the Mendoza line. This year, home dogs 56.6%. So they're up 6.1%. So home favorites down quite a bit. Home dogs up quite a bit. And looking at the over-unders, from 2015 to 2019, over-unders were 47.9%. They are now 51.2%. But the number that just screams, and if you watched SEC football this past weekend, it's not going to surprise anyone. Conference games, conference game totals from 15 to 19, previous 4 years, 47%. Not a surprise. You're into the conference, you play a little more conservative. Conference games this year, 57.9% to the over. So a 10% increase in conference totals from the previous 4 years. We'll see what happens now that the Big Ten and Mountain West are involved. So just some numbers to keep apprised of as this 2020 season progresses.
Good stuff as always, guys. He's a great follow on Twitter at CalSportsLV. Also, Robbie Veno on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports, and myself on Twitter at Drew Martin Betts. Guys, shout out to the chat box joining us live here. We got Johnny Outlaw, Ryan S., Brett Wheeler, Trailer Park Picks as well, Bill McGee, Cash in here, Brian Watson, all you guys. Thank you for joining us live. We got people from all around the world, guys. Mexico City, looks like maybe England in the house as well, sometimes Australia. So let us know where you're watching from. Iowa, Nebraska, it is all good. We got 3 games we're breaking down on today's card. Tulsa, USF, Friday night. We got Iowa State, Oklahoma State, the battle at top 25s there in the Big 12 on Saturday, and also Michigan, Minnesota in the Saturday night matchup, also a top 25 game. We're going to be breaking down all 3 of those games, plus best bets at the end. Ralph, is there anything else you wanted to get out there before we get into the games, breaking them down this weekend?
Nope, let's do it.
All right, let's get into it, guys. ESPN 7:30 kick on Friday night, 307, 308, the rotation number here, Ralph. Tulsa at USF. This in Tampa, 51 being the total. Tulsa, -10 or -10.5, depending what shop we're shopping at here. Ralph, I'll throw it over to you. AAC matchup, Friday Night Lights. What are you thinking?
It's you look at Tulsa's defense and, you say, well, 277 yards allowed to Oklahoma State, but it was a backup quarterback. And then they allowed 455 yards to UCF, so that's not good. But I want to remind people this. When you're comparing teams, I don't look at what they allowed. I looked at what they allowed compared to their average. So while you may say, oh, Tulsa had a bad performance allowing 455 yards to UCF, that is 106 yards less than UCF has averaged this season. So actually, it's a positive performance. Although if you tell that number to someone, they're going to think that's just a horrendous performance. Tulsa obviously snapped UCF's 21-game win streak when they went there. Haven't played since October 3rd. But because they're a rush attack, that doesn't bother me. If they were more of a pass-happy team, the layoff might concern me. But when you have Prince and Wilkerson running the ball, they ran the ball 44 times against UCF. They ran the ball 31 times against Oklahoma State. We're going against a rush defense of USF that, you have an O-line that's allowed 17 sacks. You allowed 3 sacks to Citadel opening game at home. What does that set up for a Tulsa D-line, that had 6 sacks against Oklahoma State? That's a bad matchup. Then I look at USF's rush defense. They're allowing 204 yards per game. They're allowing 4.4 yards per carry. You're coming off a very disappointing game for USF. You beat the Citadel. You got crushed against Notre Dame. You played better against Cincinnati but lost. Then you got crushed against East Carolina. And then Temple, you're winning the game. What happens? You give up a fourth quarter fumble, scoop, and score, and then you miss a 2-point conversion. So that's tough momentum to take into this game. Having lost 4 straight with that tough loss, I am on the Tulsa side.
Ralph, I totally agree with you. And guys, I want to throw out a situation here. It kind of goes against Ralph's home dogs here, 56% on the year. I like the Tulsa Hurricanes as well. And there's a situation where Tulsa's only played 2 games here, but the odds makers, the betting markets overall, are off on pricing Tulsa correctly by 41 points this season. They were 10 point They lost the game by 10 points against Oklahoma State, but they were underdogs by 23. And also they were underdogs by 20 points to UCF and won the game outright by 8 points. You don't normally see that through 2 games, kind of pricing off there by 40 points, but Tulsa has it here. So that tells me that just price point is very incorrect on Tulsa. And South Florida, like Ralph said, losing 4 straight here, have not beat a Division I FBS team yet. I like the Tulsa Hurricane here as well, Robbie. I would lay the 10 if you can find it, which you can, both in Las Vegas and offshore. I like Tulsa -10 here, Robbie. How do you feel?
Yeah, I'll make it a 3-way agreement here. And I'm going to, a lot of the stuff I had, Ralph has hit on. So let me just expand on some of the stuff that he presented with the Tulsa case here. First off, let's just look. And I know it was a backup quarterback against Oklahoma State, but let's take into consideration what Tulsa has faced here. When you talk about facing Tylan Wallace, very much to be a first-round NFL draft choice, if not the first wide receiver taken in the draft for Oklahoma State, and Chuba Hubbard. And you pair Tylan Wallace up with Dylan Stoner. So there were great skill position people that they had to shut down, despite the fact that Illingsworth came in finally as a third-team quarterback and, gained the job after that. The second thing I want to point out is that in those 2 games that they played against Oklahoma State and Central Florida, remember Central Florida with Dylan Gabriel and company, that both of those teams, Oklahoma State and Central Florida, are very much diverse offenses. You have to stop the run. You have to stop the pass. Difficult to do against both. But Tulsa was only outgained combined by 18 yards against those 2 teams. That's phenomenal considering that into the Oklahoma State game, and Ralph talked about this, Tulsa's a rush-first team. The percentages on that play calling wise are 57%, 56.8 if you want to be exact, 56.8 to 43.2 in favor of the rush. So they lose Shamari Brooks, their number 1 running back prior to the Oklahoma State game. He's out for the year, gets injured in practice on a Wednesday before game day Saturday. So they even use backup running backs to do the damage that they've done so far. So I think Tulsa defensively, the strength of schedule they've played has been outstanding. The fact that they were able to stay so close total yardage-wise, again, outstanding. The South Florida side has played 2 teams that power rating-wise are comparable to Oklahoma State and Central Florida. Those 2 teams, Notre Dame and Cincinnati, USF gets beat combined 80-7. They get outgained 861 to 522. So they get slaughtered against that level of competition where, the Tulsa side stayed close. Last week, we see USF come up with a big performance against Temple, right? They score 37 points. They only lose 39-37. But I didn't see any improvement offensively, Drew. I mean, this is a team that capitalized on touchdown drives of 49, 35, and 46 yards. Their 324 total yards don't correlate to 37 points. And those 324 are 5 less than their season average. So they really didn't even play an average game offensively against Tulsa, yet they were able to score 37 points. Ralph talked about protecting the quarterback. This team is minus 14 in sacks this year. They've allowed 17. They've only gotten 3. So they can't protect their quarterback. They can't rush the opponent's quarterback either. The 204 yards per game they're giving up on the ground fits well with what Tulsa wants to do. I would say great job by second-year defensive coordinator Joseph Gillespie for Tulsa. Tulsa only had 4 returnees on the defensive side of the football coming in. So what they've done right now has been really good. Granted, they've had 2 weeks between every single game they've played. They've got 20 days here, as Ralph mentioned. It's a lot of time to prepare, but still they've done very well defensively against some stiff competition. South Florida, Drew, hasn't seen Gillespie's 3-3-5 defense. They haven't played a 3-3-5 defense yet this season. And they didn't play this team last year, so they haven't gotten a chance to see it. I think it could cause trouble. Last note, it goes back to what Ralph said. The total yardage, the 455 Tulsa allowed to UCF, was UCF's season low by 177 yards. In every other game UCF has played, they gained 660, 632, and last week 798 yards against Memphis. So the defensive performance they had against both of those opponents they played so far has been outstanding.
Ralph, did you want to come in here before we move on to the next game?
I just want to put a numerical value on, what Robbie mentioned, strength of schedule. Okay, there's 77 teams that have played college football. USF's played the number 64 schedule. Tulsa, with their 2 opponents, has the number 1 toughest schedule in college football. So, we're talking, granted, 2 games, a lot of time in between, but that's the exact same situation they're in. So, you have to look at those comparisons. And granted, you could say, is it really the toughest schedule? Well, yeah, Oklahoma State's in the top 10, and UCF, was there too. So clearly, the strength of schedule, I think. Because of that strength of schedule is why Tulsa has that big ATS numbers, because you've played that tough schedule. So, how much of adjustment can they make? That's the guessing game they're playing, being a dog to being a favorite. It's very tough to take someone that was a 21-point dog and wins the game and then go make them a double-digit favorite the next week. It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, and Ralph, that speaks to what I was talking about in terms of pricing this team right now. I don't think there's anybody out there in college football handicapping, and a bunch of odds makers like I do, that would feel very, very confident in their number on Tulsa. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, you're basically. I think you're probably taking almost a middle of what you think it should be relative to where the line is, because remember this. There's still a lot of new gamblers that we get on these shows every week. A bookmaker's job is not to put the number where he thinks it should be between the value of the team. It's a bookmaker's job is to put a number where he's going to get 50% of money on Tulsa, 50% money on USF. And those people that watched USF say, oh my God, they almost went on the road and beat Temple last week. Yeah. They're not that bad. And this Tulsa team hasn't played in a few weeks. So out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah, and Robbie, any last words here on pricing Tulsa? Just against the number 1 schedule and the odds makers being off by 40 points.
Yeah, just from my own power ratings perspective, guys, I made Tulsa 9, which was, it's close to. Obviously, Tulsa's been bet pretty heavy now, but it was close to the opening number. So I think is a pretty good gauge on both sides here, and I just. Again, would point out that when you're doing these things, from my standpoint, Drew, you guys know well enough that I mostly come from a fundamental or situational point of view here. And when you just look at the results and dig through the weeds at what South Florida has done, including that close loss to Temple last week, I think it says more about Temple not being a great team than it does about South Florida gaining any traction under first-year head coach Jeff Scott. The numbers just weren't there to support a 37-point performance. And then, Ralph went through the schedule and the teams that destroyed them, and I went through the top 2 teams they played, which destroyed them. I don't know that South Florida's gotten any better in 5 games, and certainly Tulsa got better right away in their first 2. To be within 18 total yards combined of Oklahoma State and Central Florida, to me, outstanding job.
And both on the road, yeah.
And this one will be their third on the road, so they haven't even gotten to play home yet. Philip Montgomery, a disciple of Art Briles, he's shown the ability to change gears here. When he first got to Tulsa, that air raid, he was throwing it all over the lot, but we pointed out the play calling numbers here. Very heavy towards the run, which might not suit South Florida that well.
And we got Johnny in the chat box. You guys think Tulsa line is going to move past the 10 points? I do, Johnny. In my personal opinion, I could see this, sitting at 10 and a half, 11, if not inching up towards 12, just because of Tulsa's ATS record here. Any quick thoughts on that, Ralph or Robbie?
I agree. If you want to bet Tulsa, I would say grab it now. If you want to bet USF, I would suggest waiting.
All right, guys. We also got a shout out here to Lim coming in from the Philippines. Jamal Madison joining us as well. Ryan Else, welcome in. And Nathan from sunny Hawaii. So pretty early there, I bet, on the island. Thank you for joining us bright and early here on Tuesday morning, 10 a.m. Pacific time. Each and every week, Robbie Veno, Ralph Michaels, myself, Drew Martin, breaking down the college football card. 3 games plus best bets at the end as we move on to our second game here. Top 20 matchup on Fox, 3:30 Eastern kick here, guys. Iowa State at Oklahoma State. We're seeing the Cowboys from Oklahoma State, Robbie, -3 in the hook at home, 52 the total in this Big 12 matchup.
Well, let's start here, Drew, because we haven't seen Oklahoma State in a while, right? We've seen Iowa State recently, but Oklahoma State's been absent for a little bit here. It gave their number 1 quarterback, Spencer Sanders, time to heal. As far as practice this week goes, Spencer Sanders is a full participant in practice. He's alternating reps at this point in time, according to head coach Mike Gundy, with the freshman Shane Illingsworth. And Gundy even alluded to the fact that he might play both of these guys, but he's very, very happy with the quarterback situation at this time. Remember, projecting Oklahoma State and what their outcome in the Big 12 might be this year when we went through this in the preseason, the offense was something that we talked about a ton. 10 returning starters, the fact that Wallace and Hubbard decided not to go pro and came back even after Hubbard had the little bit of confrontation with his head coach, Mike Gundy. He could have opted out. He didn't. This offense at some point, guys, is going to explode the way we expected it to. It could be this week against Iowa State. If I go back to last year's game, we see a 34-27 final. I'm going to get into that in just a second here, because I want to point out the fact that Iowa State, I think defensively, just off the top of most people's heads, I think they're overrated. I think most people would tell you that Iowa State is a better defense than what I actually think they are. Their first 3 games, they give up over 30 points. And I'm even going to, let's take the exception for the TCU game where they threw a touchdown pass on the final play of the game. We all remember that one, where Gary Patterson decided not to kick the extra point, and a lot of money exchanged hands point spread-wise in that game. But they gave up over 30, and then they come out last week and they only give up 15. And here comes the Iowa State defense. But again, I'm going to point out that these games are all situational. They're all matchup-based, and where Iowa State and Texas Tech are concerned, that matchup suits the Iowa State defense just fine. Texas Tech has no running game to speak of. And for 2 years in a row now, what Iowa State has done to them is they've just basically umbrellaed them. Everything underneath will come up and make tackles, and you won't go anywhere. Now, they hurt Alan Bowman in this game. Their pass rush got to him. The final 8:30, I think it was, Henry Colombi, the transfer from Utah State, who this coaching staff had at Utah State, he plays. They don't score a TD offensively in that game until 3 minutes and 40 seconds left, but it's a totally different story than how you defend Oklahoma State, which can run and pass equally as well. And I'll just go back to last year, because most of the pieces here, guys, are the same. On Oklahoma State's offense, Iowa State lost a little bit on their defense. But how about these for explosive plays last year out of the Cowboys of Oklahoma State? 71-yard touchdown pass to Tylan Wallace, 4-play drive, 90 yards, minute 59. 50-yard pass from Spencer Sanders to Braden Johnson, 4 plays, 82 yards, a minute 36. Chuba Hubbard, 65-yard touchdown run, 4 plays, 89 yards, 1 minute 23. That's 3 touchdown drives, huge explosive plays from their own side of the field. 21 points for Oklahoma State. That's the problem that Iowa State has here, because you can't just focus on stopping one thing against this team. And, for all intent and purposes, guys, you have to double cover Tylan Wallace. Otherwise, if you single him up, you're going to get torched. So Iowa State's got defensive problems here. And I just want to reach back to, because Oklahoma State's defense has been really good. In fact, I happen to be good friends with an Oklahoma State alum who said it's the best defense he's seen in Stillwater in the last 10 years. Jim Knowles is the third-year DC. So I just went back to check last year. This game is tied 27-27 in the fourth quarter after Iowa State ties it up. And then with a chance to win the game on their final 4 drives, they throw 3 interceptions and punt. 12 total plays in 4 drives, only 27 yards. Even last year, the Oklahoma State defense stood up to this team when it counted the most. This year, they're even better. I think Oklahoma State's a really good side here, guys. I know my power ratings don't necessarily indicate it, but I never really base a play off of the power ratings. I think I had OSU minus 2.5 in this one. They're actually 3. But I think when you uncover the matchup here, there's a lot in favor of Oklahoma State. So I would be on that side.
Ralph, they are 3-0 straight up, 2-1 ATS. Their only ATS loss was to Tulsa, who, the odds makers have mispriced like we've already talked about. Do you think Oklahoma State's underrated as well?
Drew, get ready to make the determining decision here because I'm going to disagree with Robbie.
Okay.
So, that's what it's all about. 2 people looking at a game and disagreeing and making the points. So, number one, I'm going to say this. Hubbard is not the same running back this year. If you watched him, he's only averaging 4.9 yards per carry. I mean, LD Brown's averaging 7-something. He's been the more dynamic running back. Is that because they're keying on the running game without Sanders? There very well could be. Remember, Sanders only threw 2 passes in that first game before he got hurt. But, I look at Iowa State's defense, and I'm going to disagree that, on their defense. Yeah, they allowed 31 points to Louisiana, but they allowed 272 yards and 14 first downs. They held Louisiana to a season low. They held Oklahoma to a season low. They held Texas Tech to a season low. That's what I look at a defense. When you face those 3 offenses and you've held them all to a season low when you're 4 or 5 games into the season, that means something for me. Better quarterback, I'm going to back Purdy. Yeah, Spencer Sanders, if he's healthy and everything's going, some people may say Sanders, but Sanders, we know, has missed a couple games with the ankle. Sanders, we know, is back splitting snaps. We're not even sure if he's going to play. You have Brock Purdy, who now is playing as well as he can. He can run the ball when he needs to. If you have an injured player like Spencer Sanders, are you going to let him run like he has in the past when he's had the dynamic offense? If he's not 100%, I don't want any part of him. You have Matt Campbell, who's 19-9 ATS as a dog. I like the Iowa State side here.
Robbie, give you last word here because Ralph brings up a good point in Spencer Sanders and something that I know over the past, 4 or 5 years, I've done a terrible job with. I'm definitely under 50% when I'm playing doctor in terms of how healthy is Spencer Sanders. I would rather just kind of back off and not bet that rather than, is he 95 or 100%? Mm-hmm. I just haven't done well in that kind of profile of bet. I'm throwing it back to you for last word, though. Did Ralph kind of sway you off of it?
Well, I would just gauge it by this, guys. I would say that if you're a full participant in practice on Monday, then I think you're in pretty good health. And Mike Gundy had nothing but good things to say about the way he looked and his health. So I think that the time off did this team well where he's concerned as far as, getting that injury to heal. The fact that he's alternating snaps in practice, I don't know that that's an indication of Sanders maybe not being healthy, but I think it's more towards Shane Illingsworth being really successful the last time we saw him running the team. Now, it was against Kansas. You don't want to get carried away, but the guy's been quarterbacking the team for every quarter this season through 3 games except for 1. We've seen his arm is real good, so maybe Gundy wants to keep some of that rhythm going. Sometimes if you play 2 quarterbacks, guys, you disrupt rhythm, and that could be a case here. And sometimes coaches play head games with opposing DCs. Hey, I'm going to play 2 quarterbacks. Go ahead and, game plan for that.
Sure.
And then you show up with only Sanders. So I don't know if it's gamesmanship. I don't know if it's he doesn't want to take Illingsworth out of the lineup. But I think Sanders is going to be your starting quarterback. I think the fact that he's a full participant in practice on a Monday tells me all I need to know about his health. So I think that you have to defend a lot of moving parts here with Oklahoma State for sure. A lot more than you have to do with Texas Tech. The Oklahoma game, I think, I had a number, and Ralph, you would know better than me because you keep track of these numbers, but the youth on the Oklahoma team was pointed out in a broadcast about just how young they are, starting with Spencer Rattler at quarterback. And if you remember back to that Iowa State game, it was a couple of Spencer Rattler mistakes that got OU in trouble. I think they were ahead 30-23, wind up losing 37-30 in that game. Oklahoma State's not a young football team. Like I say, 10 returning starters, the entire offensive line, the quarterback, the running back, the wide receiving core, the whole shebang. So I think that maybe there's a slight difference there. Oklahoma under pressure with a young football team and a lot of positions on offense, maybe cracked a little bit against Iowa State. We'll see. It should be a really good game, and I'm sure Oklahoma State's chomping at the bit to get back on the field.
Yeah, I think, Robbie, Oklahoma only has 2 seniors out of their starting 11. Don't quote me on that number, but I'm fairly confident that was the number in that game.
All right, and shout out to the chat box. Guys liking the over in this game. I'll tell you, Ralph, I probably lightly lean here with the Oklahoma State side just because Robbie's point on, and here we go back to playing doctored, which I'm not very good at and have lost in the past. But Spencer Sanders playing on Monday in practice, especially after the long layoff from their last game, it makes me think that he would be a little bit more healthy than not. Also, shout out to Farrington coming in from the Bahamas. Also, Lingo coming in from New Jersey. Appreciate you guys joining us here. Let us know from the Bahamas. We got the Bahamas Bowl. Not sure if that's still going on this year, guys. But
the only 2 bowls to have canceled so far, the Bahamas and Hawaii. Every other bowl game is in limbo. Only the long airplane trips have canceled.
Okay. Well, guys, we got a Big Ten matchup to finish it off here on the 3 games we're breaking down. We got a top 21 matchup here with 21 ranked Minnesota hosting 18th ranked Michigan, 7:30 Eastern kick on ABC. Ralph, we're seeing Michigan -3 road favorites here, 54.5 being the total. We're heading to the Big Ten. Ralph, what are you thinking Saturday night?
Well, let's go back and just pretend like this is week 1 of the season, which it is for the Big Ten. Last year, remember this Michigan team went 9-4 against my number 1 toughest schedule. They were plus 94 yards per game. That was with 13 returning starters. Minnesota had 15 returning starters last year, finished 11-2. That was my number 53 schedule, and they were plus 125 yards per game. We know the talent Minnesota had, on the receivers especially. We know that their offense was so dynamic that Penn State took away their OC. But this year, there are 130 FBS teams. Michigan comes in number 125 in experience, 5th least experienced team, 5 starters on offense, 6 starters on defense. You look back at Minnesota, 13 returning starters, 9 on offense, 9 on defense. I was surprised. Harbaugh pulled out Joe Milton to be a starter. So I don't know how many people saw that coming from the reports that we read and practices. I guess Milton lately has come up and pulled it, but I am going to lean under this. We've seen Michigan's defense perform. We see Michigan's defense, when you look at Michigan's defense and you look at the players that still get drafted in the NFL, they've underperformed in college football. I think they're finally getting it going. I know Michigan's offense, I'm not going to bet against them on the road here. And while Minnesota does have the offense that people are going to perceive much better, I'm looking for a slower start for them. So I'm going to make it simple. It's not a game I'm going to bet. There's only maybe one Big Ten game I'm looking at, game 1, where I like my numbers relative to where they are. But this number's close enough. The situation's close enough. You have a Minnesota team that this is the year, okay? Last year you got to 11 wins. that caused people's attention. Now you're not catching anyone by surprise. I believe game day is going to be there Friday night. So you have an entirely pumped up home team. That's not what I want against the Michigan team that has been disrespected for how many years, has finished the season getting blown out by Ohio State how many years, has spent the offseason fired up like they are. So I'm passing on the side, and I am going to give a lean with the under. I believe it's 55 when I looked this morning.
All right, liking the under there. Robbie, I'll tell you, I like PJ Fleck and company, not only because I ran into him at a Vegas Golden Knights game and did give him a row the boat. He was loving it too, him and his wife. Really nice guy, by the way, for whatever that's worth. But like Ralph, like you were saying, 11-2 last year, beating Auburn in the bowl game. Not only beating Auburn, being the more dominant team in that bowl game against that good defensive line there. A well-coached team. I think that Minnesota's underrated here. I think the home dog covers this spread and wins outright Saturday night. Robbie, what do you think?
Well, I think the very most important thing for Minnesota was the day wide receiver Rashad Bateman decided to opt back in for this offense, because without him, we see Tyler Johnson, his wide receiver partner last year, in the NFL making plays with Tom Brady on the Tampa Bay side, and Bateman might be better than Johnson is. So when he decided, he opted out, and then he decided once the Big Ten said we're going to play football, he jumped right back in, as did a lot of players, especially where Ohio State's concerned. The same wasn't the case for Michigan. And I'll enhance Ralph's point about Michigan maybe being, I forget what the number was in the hundreds for least experience. But their lack of experience comes in some tough places. And I'm going to compare this team to Auburn. 4 offensive linemen gone, so they only have 1 returning offensive lineman. That sounds a lot like the Auburn offensive line. Bo Nix has some games under his belt, a full season under his belt, but Joe Milton, 6'5", 234, pocket passer, lacks wide receiving weapons at this point in time. They're very young at that position, so you've got an offensive line that's new. And I know Michigan piles up the five-star blue chips as far as recruiting goes, but it's still new. Auburn does the same, right? And Auburn's offensive line hasn't figured it out yet. Wide receiving core, that's new. Reminds me a lot of Auburn. Outside of Seth Williams, they don't really have another guy that's stepped up as a wide receiver. Offensively, I think they could struggle here. But again, I'll go back to another point that Ralph made. Minnesota, of West Division teams last year, had the greatest disparity inside the conference of total yards gained to total yards allowed. They were plus 134.2. However, they played the worst crossover schedule of any team out of the West. They played the weakest. So now they're getting a Michigan defense, which, if you look at that side of the football, guys, there's a lot of Big Ten people that will tell you that they have the best set of defensive ends, not only in the conference, but maybe in the country. Aiden Hutchinson and Drew, get ready for this. Kwity Paye, Kwitty, Kwity Paye. You watch some highlights on this kid, very destructive last year. Their defensive line may cause Minnesota a little bit of trouble here. But Minnesota's got that really good ground game to go with Bateman. They're far more diverse on offense. I don't know how many they're going to score, but I'm going to join Ralph in this, because my my initial thought on this contest was immediately to play under. I think 55, you're asking these teams to get 8 touchdowns. And to me, it looks a lot more like a field goal type of game. Teams get down inside the red zone, drive stall out because the defenses are good. So I'll probably look that way. I think 55 is too big of a number unless we get some kind of freakish thing where special teams play a hand and score a lot of points, or if the defense returns fumbles or interceptions for touchdowns. Tough to bank on that. I think under 55 probably the right way to go.
Too bad it's not today. 4 to 6 inches of snow in Minneapolis. Weather for Friday night, 37. But clear. So 37 is the high. So Friday night, we're going to be looking at the 20s, guys. So I'll be chilly just watching that game.
You know what's interesting about Minnesota, guys, real quick, is, to the best of my knowledge, they are the only team that plays on a surface that is heated from underneath.
Yeah.
It's, I abbreviate it HHF, something heated field, that they had installed there a few years back. I can't remember the exact name of the turf, but actually they run heat underneath the field for those cold games because they play outdoors. Maybe it keeps the field a little bit softer, but to the best of my knowledge, they're the only team that has that.
All right, good stuff, guys. So it looks like 2 unders, and both of you guys staying off a side. I mean, gun to head, who would you choose, Ralph?
I don't know. I think, my power rating numbers have Michigan too. So, a 2-point game is not going to make me. I'm not going to back a 2-point away favorite with a new quarterback on the road. So, especially when you have the offense. And shit, it's Michigan. This team should have 15 more wins than they've had the last 4 years under Harbaugh. They just underachieve all the time. So a gun to my head, I'm just going to duck Drew and not even give you an opinion on it. I'm going to make you give the opinion on it.
Well, I'm going Minnesota here.
Okay,
Robbie, what about you, man?
Well, power ratings, I'll start there. I made that game pick 'em. So Michigan -3 as the opener showed a little bit of, leeway toward the Minnesota side. And real quick here, Drew, I saw you put up before from one of the listeners in the chat room, wanted to know if, in fact, the power ratings were on the website for this week. And they are. So, guys, go ahead. Free subscription to WagerTalk.com. Just go to my page on WagerTalk.com and you'll get my power ratings for this week. We're going to add NFL to that as well this week, so you get college football and NFL. Ralph, I'm giving you short notice here. You don't have. I should talk forever to let you look this up, but I'd be interested to see how far Minnesota has climbed recruiting-wise under PJ Fleck, because we know Michigan's got the talent. And is PJ Fleck making chicken out of chicken, or chicken salad out of chicken, or what is the case here? I have to believe they're going up.
The last couple years, Robbie, they were number 45 going into the 2019 season.
Mm-hmm.
This year, they are 38. So they haven't made that jump into the top 25 yet. He's getting there. I think as next year's recruit, he's got a couple 4 stars that were higher. Guys, I just want to jump back one more thing for our viewers. When you go to Rob's page and you look on the right-hand side for the downloads and you click on it and it's free, it asks you to register, but you don't need to put in a credit card. All you need to do is put in a name and then an email address, and then you click on it, and then on top it'll say "In my cart." You just have to click that "In my cart," and you'll be able to download the PDF from there. So it is a 2-step process. It does ask you to register, but again, don't worry about having to put a credit card in. That is not needed. Then after you buy the product, or you buy the product for no monies, then "In my cart" is on the top. You click it and you get it. So I know it's a 2-step process, and those are the questions that come into customer service occasionally. So I just wanted to be in front of that to maybe help someone do it. And it really is a pretty easy process. Once you register the first time, then you can go to my page, get downloads, go to Rob's, get downloads. You don't have to register at each page. It's very simple after that.
Good stuff, as always. Check out Ralph Michaels, WagerTalk.com, his handicapper page. And Ralph, did you put up the spring practices chart that's up there as well?
I did not. I will tweet that out if they want to get it. I did retweet as well. The college football guide is still out there. So if, when we broke down the Mountain West guys, when you break down the Mountain West, which starts this week, remember Nevada has 17 starters. Air Force only had 9. There are 9 new DCs out of the 12 on the Mountain West. So that college football guide is still available, which will get you caught up for the Big Ten, the Mountain West, and the MAC, which starts next week as well, for those that are behind the times in those 3 conferences.
Yeah, Mountain West starting this weekend. We got any quick thought? Have you researched UNLV at all, Ralph?
Well, he said he's not going to name. He said he doesn't know who his starting quarterback is, which I'm sure is BS. He just doesn't want to name it, which a lot of people do. Again, we have a whole new coach. To me, San Diego State would be the play, but I'm going to give him credit. I mean, I think they made a great hire bringing him in from Oregon. It's already helped with the recruiting. We knew the new stadium would help with recruiting. If you're a high school kid and you're deciding to go in where you play in the Mountain West, now you're playing in UNLV and Raider Stadium. I mean, that's a plus. And you have an Oregon OC who is now your head coach. You know you're a dynamic player. But, they had COVID issues this week at UNLV. They haven't practiced much. So it's a layoff game for me. But anytime I'm thinking San Diego State Conference game, under just pops in my mind.
Okay. But the 9 new DCs this offseason might point to some overs as well. But I'm with you. I don't know if I'd see too many points. Robbie, we got to get to best bets, but any quick thoughts on the Mountain West starting as well?
Yeah, real quick, where San Diego State is concerned, Brady Hoke said they're going to spread the offense more, but they're still going to look to run. So I don't know how much they'll change from Rocky Long and his prehistoric offense, but maybe they'll change a little bit to get some downfield passing incorporated into that attack. You can't really like that switch in head coaching from Rocky Long down to Brady Hoke. But he's a San Diego State guy. He's been there before, so maybe they can do some damage here as well. Mountain West going to be very interesting, Drew, for sure. Boise State, big favorite opening week over Utah State. We'll see if Utah State can bounce back under Gary Anderson. Real quick, for those who don't know, Utah State, where they're concerned, 3rd offensive coordinator last 3 years, 4th defensive coordinator last 4 years, 6th special teams coordinator in the last 6 years. You talk about turnover and then some. It's crazy at Utah State to just keep bringing in new coordinators every single year.
Wild times in the Mountain West. We got Johnny Outlaw asking about every game on the board. Robbie Veno will be part of it. It starts tomorrow, Johnny, 1:30 p.m. Pacific, and pretty much goes until 5 p.m. Pacific straight. Robbie's got part of the college football there. Teddy's starting it off with the NFL. Every game on the board, 1:30 p.m. Pacific. Guys, make sure to check out WagerTalk.com, also SportsMemo.com. $2 Tuesday today. Top play from the hottest handicapper at both sites. Discounted to just $2 for today. We got best bets coming up. Ralph, you want to start us off, man? Anything for best bets for the show?
Yeah, I'm going to go Bama first half against Tennessee. Bama is laying 21 for the game. Right now they're laying 11.5 for the first half. We've seen what their offense can do. They may have the most dynamic offense in football. But we also saw, remember, after that Mississippi debacle, they fired the DC. What happened? They gave up 24 points to Georgia in the first half. They make their adjustments the first time with the new DC. They make in-game adjustments. They shut Georgia out in the second half. I think those first game adjustments continue. Tennessee, with the quarterback getting pulled last week after throwing pick sixes, now you have that discussion of, the quarterback quandary. And if I make a mistake, am I going to get pulled? And anytime you're that type of quarterback and someone got pulled already, I'm all over Bama first half minus 11.5.
First half minus 11.5 on Alabama for Ralph. We got Robbie Veno killing it on the best bets for this show. Robbie, what do you got for best bets this week?
Yeah, we got it right again last week. Yeah, we got it right last week. BYU and Houston went way over the number, so we got 6-0 going. We'll stick with totals. Ralph and I both talked about it. For me, guys, I only take a best bet from the 3 games that we analyze on the show for those watching for the first time. Of the 3 games that we analyzed here, my best bet would be the Michigan-Minnesota under the total. I really think that touchdown drives would be turned into field goals here. I think both defenses in this opener could be your best units on the field, although Minnesota has a lot of offensive talent. We'll see what Joe Milton brings to the table, guys. I'm not really sure. I haven't seen enough of Joe Milton to make a determination, but I know playing behind 4 brand new offensive linemen and with a host of young, inexperienced wide receivers, they're going to have to lean on the ground game. Minnesota might cheat it and run 8-9 up in the box and force Milton to try and do some damage deep. I'll try this game under 55 points as the best bet.
All right, and something that might correlate a little bit with that is Minnesota plus the 3 on that Saturday night game. That's what I'm going to go with for the best bet. I actually think the better coach team with the experienced quarterback and Heck, the home underdog. We've already gone over the numbers from Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV in terms of home underdogs. And it's the Big Ten opener for both teams. So it's a watch and win opportunity. Minnesota +3. Robbie like in Michigan, Minnesota under 55. And Ralph like in Alabama first half -11.5. So Ralph, anything you want to throw out there before we shut this down, man?
Nope. Very excited to have the Big Ten back. It adds it's so much more value to the card now. I had couple weeks there where I struggled to find a handful of plays. So while COVID gave us a slow start, we're going to have some weeks next week in the MAC plays where there's 60 games being played, and we never reach that. Normally we're in the 55 range with teams having buys. We were worried about college football, and we're going to have some of the biggest weeks we've ever had moving up here at the end of October and the beginning of November. So great time to be a college football fan.
Great time to be a college football bettor as well. Just so much for the odds makers to do. We got Robbie Veno at Rob Veno Sports on Twitter. Anything you want to throw out there, Robbie, before we shut this down?
Yeah, first off, 3 cheers for what Ralph just said. I mean, 60 college football games, fantastic. A lot to choose from here. I want to say real quick, Drew, for anybody that might have fainted or dropped dead when they just heard me use an under as a best bet, guys, it happens on occasion. I know I hunt a lot of overs as plays, but pick yourselves back up. I didn't make a mistake. I like that game under. As I mentioned, it does happen on occasion where we'll play college games under the total pretty strong. So under 55 in Michigan, Minnesota game. Thanks, everybody, for watching.
Rob, I just got to ask you real quick. Have you ever gone through? I know that, I'm good friends with Mark Lawrence, and Mark Lawrence is a dog player. Mm-hmm. So if Mark Lawrence gives out a favorite, you go, what the hell? And then I look to see what his favorite records was, and they're very good. Have you ever gone through to see what just your unders records are, because you don't normally use them? So I'd be interested to know next week, if you go through your database, check what your percentage is for just under plays to see if, because most of your plays are over. So I find myself, if I'm in a certain situation and I'm thinking the opposite way, it's normally a very high percentage.
Yeah, no, and I could say off the top of my head without looking it up, Ralph, it's going to be really good when I play under. NFL as well. But I hunt overs, and if I see an under, it usually means good things. I don't know the exact number, but we'll get this Michigan-Minnesota game home as well.
All right, good stuff, guys. Ralph Michaels at Cal Sports LV on Twitter, at Rob Veno Sports on Twitter, at Drew Martin Betts. Appreciate everybody joining us live in the chat box. Nathan Cantor, Johnny Outlaw, Mike Campbell, Tony A, Brett Wheeler, BDog241. Appreciate all you guys joining us. And if you're watching on replay, feel free to drop a comment below. Please smash the like button on your way out. And we will be back next Tuesday, 10 a.m. Pacific time, for the best damn college football.